a favor from you. I said, okay. He said, Betty is chairing this meeting, and she's the boss of the Betty Ford Foundation. And I have a couple of things I want to suggest. So I'm going to tell you, because she won't listen to me. She'll listen to you, Norman. I said, so what else is new, Mr. President? But that's the kind of guy he was. He was a terrific guy. You could take him anywhere, and you never know who he was. See?
You showed me a picture earlier of the five living presidents that was autographed by all of them.
Well, I can tell you that story if you'd like. That picture was taken at Ronald Reagan's library, the inauguration of Ronald Reagan's library. And the New York Times had an article that the 5 presidents, which was unusual, living presidents, were met in Ronald Reagan's library to dedicate it, and they each signed a autographed picture with the 5 of them together. And then he called me one day and he said, how's everything, Norm? I said, fine. How's it? Anything I could do for you? I said, yes, there is. I said, I just read the Times and I see where you fellas signed 100 pictures for each of you. And I'd like one of those pictures. Next day, Federal Express, I got that picture of the 5 living presidents with their names signed to it.
Okay, we're going to bring you back to Florida again. Explain to me how that happened. How did you end up back in Florida when you were having such a great life up in the Washington and Virginia area?
Well, life was great, but I was in love with Florida. I was a Florida lover from inception of the first time I came down here. And always said that I wanted to live part-time in Florida. So I opened a small business in Florida, which was not successful. Never went bad, but never really successful. And I rented a house in Miami at that time. And I was married in Miami, incidentally. I rented a house.
No, you were married in Miami.
I was married in Miami.
To Ruth?
To Ruth, of course.
You didn't get married in Pittsburgh?
Say that again?
You didn't get married in Pittsburgh?
No, in Miami.
Okay.
I was married in Miami in 1948. And I went back to Pittsburgh and developed my organization, so to speak, and built on it, and everything after that got better and better and better. I loved to work. It was very enjoyable for me to get up in the morning to go to work. During my lifetime, I found there are several people say the same thing, but it don't mean the same thing. One gets up and says, good God, it's morning. I gotta go to work. Well, my attitude was, good morning, God, I'm going to work. And I really enjoyed working to the point where when I accumulated a considerable sum of money, I thought maybe you're supposed to retire at age 50. And I retired for 1 year. And at the end of 1 year, I pulled the covers over my head and I wouldn't get out of bed. And my wife said to me, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? I said, Ruth, I don't know what to do with myself. and she said, I think you better go in for some psychiatric treatment. And I said, I think you're right. And I went to a doctor who's a great friend today, still is, DuPont, and told him what my problems were. He said, you don't have a problem. I said, well, what am I doing here? He said, oh, of course, I know why you're here, but all you have to do, Mr. Rales, is go back to work. You're a worker. You're not a golfer. You're not a guy who goes about town. You're not a bar guy. You don't care about those things. Go back to work, and you'll be a happy gentleman. And I was. And I was a happy gentleman. And of course, in those days, I prospered. I bought the Lighthouse Cove Hotel. I bought the Canadian House. I bought one of the places down in Miami. I forget the name of that. That was a very nice place. And I was very prominent early on in financing many of the time-sharing people who folks thought that that was a racket, and I was able to see what qualities it had and what it could really do for the public, for the entrepreneur, and for the builder. And it was a win-win deal for everybody. As a, for instance, if you in those days, I'm going back to when I financed them in the 1950s, late 50s, yeah. A person could go in and buy a time-sharing unit for $4,000, $5,000, or $6,000, pay it over a period of 10 years, and each year decide where in the world he wanted to go to another time-sharing and exchange his week so he can go. Our brother bought a place years ago in Key West, and he's traveled all over the world in time-sharing, done in a prudent and proper manner. Like anything else, there are some bad apples, but you weed them out.
Did you do that in Florida?
Pardon?
Did you get into time sharing in Florida?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I bought all the paper. Other people ran it for me. They ran I had several partners in the Canada House and the Lighthouse Cove on 14th Street and a place in Miami. But I was very responsible for the financing of it when banks would not finance them.
Do you remember when you first came to Boca Raton?
Yes, sure, very well. I lived in Bay Harbor, had a very beautiful home there, right on the bay, loved it.
That was a winter home, so you still...
Yes.
Okay.
It was a winter home, loved it, and people next door or the door after that were killed in a robbery. And it was not a gated community. And we became frightened. And I said, we're going to have to look elsewhere. Across the bay from us was Indian Creek Country Club. Indian Creek Country Club in those days was the most prominent club in all of Florida. You had the real wealth of Barbara Hutton from Woolworth and the guy from television, and you had all the extremely wealthy people there. And I would sit in my outside in my patio and look across there, and I had a beautiful golf course, and they were always shaving the golf course, but I never saw anybody playing. See? And when this happened, my wife said, you know, I just read in the Herald that there's a home for sale at Indian Creek. Well, I said, wonderful, let's go over there and take a look at it. And Swift Packing Company people lived there and passed away, and their home was for sale. 3 acres on the water, both ways. And when I got there, the caretaker, it was a nice, beautiful home for your guests, and the caretaker said, Mr. Rales, pick some oranges, or pick some lemons, or pick what you like, or all the things that Ruth and I liked, and in an older home, which we liked also. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I winked at her, and we bought the home. I gave a deposit to the realtor, and I took the contract to my lawyer in Miami, Patricia Lebo, a woman, very wonderful gal, and she said, what are you doing? I said, isn't this obvious? You buying a home? Yeah, she said, but you can't buy a home there. I said, what do you mean I can't? I gave him a deposit. Oh, no, no Jews allowed there. I said, in Miami Beach, no Jews allowed? She said, absolutely no Jews allowed there. But what I'll do is a prominent guy who lives there, and he bought a piece of property in Delray, and he's time-sharing it. He was the biggest penny broker retired on Wall Street, and he bought this big and beautiful unit in Delray, and he wants to time-share it, and he's looking for the end financing. Right up your alley. I'll arrange a luncheon for you and he and I, and after we have lunch, I'll leave and you could talk to him about anything you want. And we had lunch, and after she left, I said to him, you know, why don't we go over to my home and have a drink together, and I can talk to you about your project that you want to finance up in Delray. And I want to hear more about it. And when we sat out on my patio, of course, you could see Indian Creek. He says, that's where I live. See, he lived there. I said, yes, I understand you live there, and I bought a home there. He said, you bought a home there? What do you mean? Did you buy the Swift home? I said, yes. I said, that's not a problem. He said, wonderful, great to have you for a neighbor, and everything nice, and told me about his project, and I said I'd go up to Delray, and if I liked it, I'll finance the end financing, mortgage financing. He said, fine. I said, now, getting into having a home there is not a big problem, and I don't play golf, but many of my guests play golf. And there's no problem getting into the country club, is there? He said, no. He said, as a matter of fact, I'm one of the members on the board. I said, even if I'm Jewish? He said, what did you say? I said, even if I'm Jewish. He said, how do you want me to answer you? I said, I've been perfectly candid and frank with you, and I'm going to look at your project tomorrow. If I like it, no matter what you say, I'm going to give you the money for it. He said, you don't have a Chinaman's chance in the world of getting into that club. I said, you mean all the people that I bring down can't play golf? He said, that's right. At any rate, I went back to the realtor. I said, I guess I don't belong there. She said, here's your check back. And I didn't have any problem with that. So then I decided to come up to Boca.
How did you know about Boca? Or what did you know about Boca?
Not a whole lot, except, as a matter of fact, when you looked at your map, if you were driving down, you never saw Boca. It was not on your map. Hey, there was some reason, or however they did it, they didn't show it. And that, of course, you know the Boca history and how those people built this up and how the Flaglers and the Mellons and the DuPonts and the Morgans had the hotel, and they'd come down in their rail car, play a couple of weeks golf and go. That was it. So they really, no one ever knew about Boca. But then you would hear a little, it's a great community, nice place, and et cetera, et cetera. And
Okay. Excuse me, Norman.
We had just changed tapes.
Are we running?
Yeah, we're all.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
it was not a gated community, so I had heard about Boca Raton and that it was a nice place to live and come down and spend your winters here. My friend Patsy, who was in a home with me, was staying with me at the time. My wife was in Washington. And I said, let's take a ride up to Boca. And I inquired about some gated communities in Boca. And there was a place called the Sanctuary. And I went to see the realtor who handled the sanctuary, and she took me through, and it was just lovely. And I bought a home there. I gave them a deposit, unbeknown to my wife, okay? And I then called her and said, you coming down next week? I saw a nice area, and they had some nice homes there. You'll come down and you'll be able to select a home for yourself, see what you like. And thank God, she picked the same home that I bought. So that worked out wonderfully well.
And you didn't have any, did you ask them, or did you have a conversation with anybody about whether you were going to have any problems living there?
No,
No,
never
didn't
got
come up.
into that.
Okay.
Never really got into that. Oh, you know, you said something that's very interesting.
The realtor?
When I came up to Boca and I selected that home, I went to what was then the bank, before it became National Bank, the one on, which now is Bank of America on
Fidelity Federal?
no, which wasn't Fidelity Federal, no. It was, I forget the name of what it was. It's changed 3 or 4 times until it became Bank of America. It was National Bank. Bud Osborne was the president of it, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't remember. But there was a guy at that time, a gentleman, called Henry Fonda, who I went to see. And Henry Fonda was a very unusual, wonderful gentleman.
You mean Henry Fonda, the actor?
No,
No, another Henry Fonda.
another Henry
Okay.
Fonda. Excuse me, Avery Fonda
Avery Fonda.
was his
Okay.
name, Avery Fonda. And I told Avery Fonda that I was considering moving up to Boca and that I had interest in thoroughbred racing, and I was trying to get a box at the Gulfstream racetrack, and they told me they're all booked up and they have no boxes available. He said, I can handle that for you, Mr. Rales. You bring your account in here, and I can handle this for you. And he set me up for a dinner for Ruth and I, and with Mary Ann, whose name was Dunn then. Mr. Dunn, who passed away, owned Gulfstream Racetrack. Mary Ann Dunn and her son ran the track now, And when we had dinner together, she liked me, and I liked her, and she liked Ruth, and she said, "You needn't worry about a box. I'll handle that for you." And lo and behold, in the next few days, we had a nice box at Gulfstream Racetrack. And she and we became friendly, okay? Shortly, I realized that Boca Raton was a very strong Christian community. There were no Jews in Boca Raton to speak of at the time.
And what year are we talking about here? 1970?
Yeah, it has to be right around there. 68 was right around there. And I moved in. And of course, I loved Boca from very inception of being here.
Would you tell me why? I mean, can you remember the first time you came to Boca?
Sure, beautiful.
Can you describe
It
it?
had the appearance that you could be in any other city. But when you got into Boca, you were in a special city.
Why?
Cleaner, nicer, better well-kept, beautiful hotel, place that you could dine. You went in there, treated elegantly, and super. The hotel was a very prominent part of making Boca what it was.
Do you remember the names of any other restaurants or businesses that were here way, way back then?
No, I really,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know if Renzo's was there then, or I don't remember a lot
Okay.
of them.
Just curious.
I don't know how long they were there,
Yes,
say.
right.
But I fell in love with Boca, and so did my wife, and we liked it, but we weren't really accepted as such. Marianne Fowler was extremely nice and started to introduce us to people.
She was the one who was Marianne Dunn?
Marianne Dunn was the one who owned Gulfstream
Okay.
Racetrack,
And
and
who-
she lived in Royal Palm,
Okay.
okay? And that's where I got to know about Royal Palm, which we'll get to later.
Okay. But Marianne Fowler you just mentioned?
Her husband died, and she married a guy by the name of Joe Fowler.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
Joe Fowler was a great guy, really a wonderful guy, and the right-hand man to the insurance man who has Lynn's school, and Christine Lynn. And old man Lynn passed away.
Lynn University?
Yeah, Lynn University, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And I integrated a lot more with the people there who, I guess they felt comfortable with me, even though I was Jewish. In some of the things, we would go out together and do things, and I liked them very much. I thought that some of the things they did were not what I would approve of, but by and large, they were very nice people, and most of them lived in Royal Palm. Those were the fairly well-to-do or upper middle class who bought homes in Royal Palm in the early 50s,
Where is that located?
right here in Boca, right?
Is it still there?
Oh, yes, very much so. It's a very important part of what happened with me
Okay.
in Royal Palm. And they all lived there and probably bought those homes at that time for about $100,000, which was a lot of money, but they were the upper middle class people. And so was Marianne Dunn and Lynn and all of those folks that lived there. And they had a country club there. And I joined, not their country club, but I joined the club at the hotel. And they had golf course and all those facilities, and really, really treated you elegantly.
You mean the Boca Raton Hotel?
Yes, absolutely elegant. Frida Faber, who was in charge of the cabanas, they were just kind, good people that their first responsibility was to make the consumer happy that was part of their club. I became friendly with Michael Glenny, who became the president of the club, of Boca Raton Hotel, and I got to know my way around a little bit. I found that the Boca Raton, Boca Hospital, had no Jewish doctors. For whatever reason it was, there were no Jewish doctors there. No Jews on the board, none of those people involved. It was very much a Christian society, say. And as times evolved, I got involved with more and more people on the board of the hospital, and I got to know them. And without mentioning names, there was one board member, chairman, who was a very bad egg. No matter what, he wouldn't do anything, allow anything like that to happen, see. And he soon was gone, and then they started to take in some Jewish doctors. And the doctors all heard about Boca Raton and wanted to be here too. It was a beautiful community. And they couldn't get into the hospital, so it was hard for them to move here. They were doctors, and very hard for them to move here. And finally, we were able to talk with the people and accept the guy like Norman Rales, and many of us who were better than Norman Rales but didn't have the opportunity to be accepted. And they started to take some of them into the hospital, of course, and so it went down the line, and 10 or 15 years later, Boca Raton became the fastest growing Jewish community percentage-wise in the United States of America. And they became the doctors, the lawyers, most of the Christian people were very happy if they could get a Jewish doctor to work with them or a Jewish lawyer, see, who they didn't really know at the time. And they accepted them, and so it went that it became integrated and really, really wonderful, except in Royal Palm, no Jews, so to speak, allowed, or unwritten law amongst them. And Gloria, who's with me today, Royal Palm is a beautiful community for the Jewish folks to move into and enjoy life in a prudent and proper manner. And there was a house for sale right on the Intercoastal. Fellow had a boat, and I went over to see him. He told me how much Monday, I'll be back Friday, and I'll tell you yes or no. When I got back Friday to tell him yes, he said, it's not for sale anymore, Mr. Rales. And I looked at him, and he said, no, we decided we're not going to sell our home. And I understood what he was telling me, see? So I said, I'll tell you what I'll do with you, Mr. So-and-so. This is what you wanted. Now I'm going to double the price and give you twice as much if you're out of here by Friday, next Friday. He said, Mary, pack the things, we're on our way to the Bahamas. See? And I bought that house. I tore it down. Might have bought it for $1 million, whatever it was. I tore it down, built another house on it for another $1 million, and sold it. I forget what it was, $3.5 million, to a Jewish family from England. That guy, Sugar, what was his first name? Anyway, Sugar was very similar to Sternweiser here in America with the Yankees. He owned the biggest soccer team in England. So he was the first Jewish family that I moved into Royal Palm. And then I did that 3 or 4 times over again. Had some problems with the board of directors there. Whenever I needed something done, it became difficult, but through the Avery Fonder and Marianne Fowler, and he's a pretty good Jew, this guy, and we were able to build that community, and there are many Jewish people in that community now, all of the best interests of Boca.
Did you ever run across Herb or George Brown?
Say that a little louder, please.
Did you ever run across Herb Brown or George Brown? The Browns were, well, Herb Brown was 60 years old in 1974, but their parents and their aunt and uncle came to Boca in 1931. They were the first Jews to live in Boca. And their son, Herb, I know, was still around. He would have been 60 in 1974.
I probably know him from the Federation, which we'll get into later. But
well, I don't know if he ever was involved with that.
Not that I know of.
Okay, I was just curious
No,
if you had
not
ever
that
run
I
across
know
them.
of. Yeah.
Okay, when you arrived in 1970, there was...
Might have been late 68, but let's say.
Okay. The only congregation here was Temple Bethel, which wasn't even called Temple Bethel, I think then, but by 2004 it became Florida's largest congregation. You're a member there?
No, I'm not. I'm not a member there. I continued my membership at the synagogue in Washington.
Okay.
Oh, now I knew Rabbi Singer very well, and I spent time with him, but I was never a member of their congregation.
Have you always attended Reformed synagogues when you...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well that's... Okay, would you explain the concept of Jewish community, what that means?
Means that it's a group of people who are dedicated to making wherever they live or whatever they can do to make America and the community they live in a better place. This all, this relates to the Federation.
And we'll get into that, but I wanted to just establish what that means.
The Jewish people, as I know them, okay, and I try to rationalize all the way down the line, are generally very charitable, want to do things for the best interest of the community, no matter who they are or how they are. They want to do the right thing.
So charity is really one of the basic.
That's
elements.
one of our laws of Judaism.
Right.
See?
When in, well, I think you've already answered that. You experienced that Jewish community in your childhood, really. Wouldn't you say, at the orphanage?
Yes.
Yes. And were you also in what you would call Jewish community when you lived in Washington or Virginia or Pittsburgh or New York?
I was very involved in the Reform Jewish synagogue.
So wherever you went, you became part of whatever the Jewish community was there, and all of those communities had certain things in common. Am I
That's
right?
true.
Okay.
Correct.
And charity is a big part of it.
Absolutely.
What would you say would be the other elements?
Friendliness, sharing, working together. The whole concept of Judaism is to make this a better place for everybody to live in, whoever they are, black, white, whatever it might be. And I always thought, and all the friends I have, that's what we always wanted to do. It so happened in my case, I was able to do a little more than most, but starting with my groups.
Were you conscious of the fact that not everybody was like that? Not
Yeah,
everybody-
of course I was
Yeah.
conscious of that. And that goes through the Federation, through JARC, which, are you familiar with JARC?
I'll get to JARC, yes.
Yeah, okay, and then and the Ruth Rales Jewish Family Service. We service all the people, Delray, Boca Raton, part of Fort Lauderdale. We bring food to the elderly. We have wagons and trucks that deliver to them. We take them wherever they want to go to see the doctors or nurses. And that don't mean Jews only, they'll take anybody.
When you came here to Boca, you didn't find that same Jewish community, did you?
There was none.
Right.
There was no Jewish community to speak of.
But tell me how that changed.
Well, there was, Meyer Shine was he owned the Roney Plaza, and
I'm sorry, the what plaza?
the Roney Plaza Hotel. The Roney Plaza Hotel, going back into Miami, was where the Lana Turners, all the prominent movie stars, when they came to Florida, they would go to Roney Plaza. They didn't even know about Boca here. See, neither did I. See, it was just by accident that I found out about it and moved up here. And happier than I ever was moving here. At any rate, that was not in the community here. And how it started, there are a number of people, Bruce Warshaw, Rabbi Warshaw, and Dick Seaman, very prominent. He donated the land, and Abby Levine, and many of them, and we broke ground there and decided we were going to build a federation. And
Excuse me, the Federation exists elsewhere.
on 441 right now.
I mean, it exists not just in Boca. This isn't something you invented here.
No, federations are all over the world now, different areas. And this federation started in, I forget when we broke ground, I have it written down.
Well, I know it was established in '79.
Well, that's when it was then. we put the first shovel in the ground and said someday we're going to have a lot of nice buildings, a school, a nice place for the elderly, a lot of wonderful things, and wonderful things happen there.
And is that what defines a federation, wherever it is?
Yes, a federation is a federation, a conglomerate of different buildings being built for the Jewish community and anybody else that wants to go to school with us there. And each has its own individual business, so to speak, that runs. Let me give you, for instance, if you want to get to Jock. Jock is a friend of mine, had a Mongoloid son from Washington, moved down here and lived here, and wanted to know where he could place his son, and he was a prominent dentist in Washington, retired, and couldn't find a place, and said he'd like to build some places for children like this. And occasionally became discouraged in wanting to do this, and the Federation, which is the main part of the group, was run by Bruce Warshall, and money would come into that group and he would palm it out to different people, like the Jock or Ruth Rales Jewish Center or any one of the buildings that are there.
And what does JARC stand for?
Jewish Association Community for Retarded Children. Jock, that's Jock. That was when my friend decided, and he'd get discouraged once in a while, I would encourage him on. And encourage him on and financially back him.
Do you want to tell me his name?
Yes, Dr. Clayman, Melvin Clayman.
Melvin Clayman.
Yes. And we decided to build and fund a home for 6 suites for 6 children, all Mongoloid.
That's Down syndrome, right?
Yes. And we built that one. And I named them after former employees of mine. Morris Sampson, who was my CEO, Stell Edelstein, who was handled my Apple Valley project, Mel Rosenblatt, homes, different homes under their names. And it's a very fascinating story there. These are Mongoloid children where today we have 100 of them in there, okay? And every parent who has a Mongoloid child trying to get into that place, Jock, because of the reputation, the beauty of it. The homes are beautiful, suites for the children. And to digress just a little, very difficult to get the property. When we would get the property and buy it, and the community would find out that Mongoloid children were going to be in there, they wanted to null and void, and we had an awful tough time getting them to finally agree and compensating them in a prudent and proper manner. And now they live with them and they're very happy with them. But
Are all of the homes in Boca Raton that are associated with JARC?
no, I'm building now 4 of them. The basis is in Boca Raton on 441 and Glades Road, the whole Jewish community there. But I'm building 4 now on 441 in a shopping center there. That'll be done in August. But the beauty part of the Mongoloid children is that the world has passed them by. Oh, there's some kind of freaks there's some kind of whatever. And then the parents who raise these children and have 3 or 4 other children that are perfect, of reaching the age of 70 years old or thereabouts, and say, I wonder who's going to take care of Richard when my wife and I leave. My children are embarrassed to bring their friends over the house. We can't travel because we want to take him with us. He's dependent on us. And they don't want to accept us, my brothers, sisters, or whatever. And they call a family meeting. And they say to the children, now we're 70 years old and we're short for this world. Who's going to take care of Richard when we're gone? And inevitably, the children say, give us the money, we'll take care of him. And the parents say, well, during their lifetime, you didn't take care of him. You didn't want to be seen with him. Now, why do we want to give you the money to take care of him? You'll institutionalize him. So they come to Jock. Now they have this beautiful place, and you got to go up to see it. I mean, each home is like $600,000, which going back 10 or 15 years ago was a lot of money in building these homes for these children.
And not just building them, but maintaining.
Oh, funding them
Right.
and having 24-hour people there. And the first 2 weeks they come there, and every week we would let them go home for the weekend. And then after 2 weeks, they would say to their parents, take me home. I want to be with my friends. See? And they've integrated in there where today we have them dancing, singing, we have them on computers, they work in the supermarkets, they bake lunches and dinners for people we have one big property there where we have a kitchen and great facilities for them. And just to see them in their own little world, singing God Bless America, and it's such a wonderful feeling to watch these people live a life that the world was going to pass them by on. See?
So you're very involved with JARC, and obviously you're involved with family services.
Oh yes, very much so.
Tell me about your involvement there, how that
Well,
came about.
my wife was pretty ill for many years
Let's just clarify that. She was diagnosed
with cancer, and pretty ill for a number of years, like 10 or 12 years, and was told the first year she's got a year to live, and thank God. She lived on, and I wanted to dedicate a place to her. And we have Rales, where we have maybe a couple of hundred employees.
And you did that while she was still alive, right?
Yes, she was still alive.
That's
We had begun for a couple of years. Now it's really come into a huge facility. And as I told you earlier on, we serve the people in Delray and the older folks, and there are many Jewish families, contrary to the thinking of other people, who are very poor. And they need psychiatric treatment, they need help, they need doctors, which we provide at Rales for them. See? And we're happy to do that, and we'll continue to do that in a better manner for all people in Boca and all people in and around the community.
You have a foundation?
I have a foundation which worked with the hospital, the Boca Hospital, and we built the whole 9th floor for $2 million.
When did you form the foundation?
When did I? 20 years ago, maybe more. I would say 20 years for sure.
And how do you decide? I'm sure when you have a foundation like that, there's probably a lot of people that come to you,
Indeed there are,
you know,
and I'm
for
happy to serve
a
them.
lot of funds.
Those that
What kind of criteria do you use to decide?
well, initially I would go out and visit a facility, see their statement, see what they're doing with it, how they're running it. Unbeknown to many people, there's an orphanage right here in Boca.
What's it called?
Oh, I forget the name of it.
Okay.
It's right near the country club there, and they had 20 orphans there, right up my alley. But then when I went over it, they had 40 employees. And I said, you can't get my money. You've got to have 10 employees to take care of these 20 people, not 40. I'm not funding you folks for a living. There's other people who need this money, and I want to fund them. So I would go and visit them, and I would talk to them, and I'd go over their statement and see that they're 100% trying to do things in the correct manner.
So would you say your main areas of giving that you're interested in would be helping children and helping really anybody who is unfortunate in
And helping
need.
older folks.
And
That's a
older
very important thing, to help the older folks who can't help themselves. We built a building right on the Federation premises, 103 units with balconies and swimming pool, and surrounded by the high school and the children's school there. And nobody's income can be over $11,000 a year, and they have to be 65 years old or older to fill out an application. Now, can you imagine living on $11,000 a year?
Certainly not in Boca Raton.
Now they had a beautiful 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment with a balcony. In their wildest dreams, they never ever dreamt they'd have anything like that.
What's the name of that facility?
It's part of the Federation.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
part of the Federation. And that was being that I spent a lot of my time in Washington. We were able to get a nice grant towards building that building.
Going back to how the Federation is set up, there's all these different agencies, they call them.
All run on our own.
And are the agencies owned by the Federation?
Yes, the Federation
Okay.
is the overall donator of some money to the Federation. Well, like anything else, the Ruth Rales, the Jocks, the other places are starting to feel their own oats, and they do their own fundraising, and they want to be on their own. So they take less and less from the Federation.
That's
Because
wonderful.
they don't want to be dictated to by the Federation's policies. Each of the people in charge of their different places, pretty good folks.
Does the Federation maintain control? Or is there something legally that binds them?
Oh, yes, I think so. There
Yeah,
is something
okay.
that legally binds them
But
to.
did all of those agencies start after the Federation? Did the Federation, in other words, create each one of them, or were some
That
of them
came
already?
after the Federation was built.
Okay.
After the first
start
building
with the
was-
Federation and then all of the agencies?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
You've received recognition for your generosity from time to time, I imagine. From,
Never looking for it,
I know,
although
I'm
I'm
quite
talking
sure
about
you
it
do.
here.
That's okay,
I,
that's what
I,
we're here for.
I have no interest in
Somebody
that.
forced you to tell me about the recognition that you've received.
I have no interest in what I've done or how I've done it or what it's been. I do not. The recognition I like is when I'm in the mall and an elderly parent comes to me and says, Norman, and they kiss me and say, you don't know what you did for me and my wife by taking so-and-so Richard in the jock. I now visit my brother in California who I haven't seen for 40 years. My wife goes to her sister up in Philadelphia, and you started a whole new romance between my wife and I, because we know Richard is comfortable and we see him all the time and he loves being there. That's the recognition I look for and enjoy the most. See? Not any newspaper articles, not anything like that. More often than not, when I'm recognized by a newspaper, I say I have no comment.
Well, just for the record, since this is about you, I'd like to mention that you were added last year in 2007 to the Boca Raton Walk of Recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And not too many people have that honor.
Thank you.
So you're special here in Boca.
I consider it a privilege. I'm a lover of Boca Raton.
And I'm sure that you've had many other forms of recognition, but that one I wanted to make sure we mentioned. Some people work hard all their lives, and then they, when they have time, when they retire, they sort of rediscover their roots and their Jewish identity. Would you say that can you relate to that at all? Did that happen to you, or was it just there all the time?
I guess you do have some who not only first recognize, but even though they recognize it, they're not charitable people. And they don't know what they're missing, unfortunately for them.
The good feeling of giving, you mean?
Oh, what a wonderful feeling that is. My God. Just to see the things and see what's happened and how you made someone's life a little better and how you've been able to bring people together, families that battle, trying to bring them together and show them there are other important things besides battle. You want to win the war, and winning the war is being together with your family.
I read a quote from the Jewish Times. It said, "As Jewish as South County is, it is not, as Jackie Mason would say, Jewish enough."
Well,
Can you tell me what Jewish enough means?
well, that could be put in by Orthodox Jews who think everybody should be an Orthodox Jew, and it's not Jewish enough when you're not.
So strict or more disciplined?
Yes, like you even have that in Israel today. My God, the Orthodox Jew is causing conflicts there that should not be.
Have you been very political at all? I know a lot of the Jewish community here is very political with the State of Israel bonds and so forth.
I contribute to that. Family does too. Political in the sense, do I know any of the politicians?
No, I was just wondering if you are active or have been in the past active as far as trying to change things in ways other than your philanthropy.
Yes, I like to make America a better place for everybody to live in. I have my own opinions of who I think should be president and why they should be president. And I was a great Hillary fan, and I was sorry to see her lose. I'd like to see a woman who, for 100 years, had women's suffrage, and she had a chance to change that a lot for the women, and I thought she could do a good job, see, and but unfortunately she didn't get in. She's a very bright young lady, highly intelligent, concerned for the welfare of the people of the world. And she had a bad incident with her husband, but America being what it is, every president before him had their own love affairs, and he got caught. Johnson, Kennedy. Kennedy was the worst. My God. And Roosevelt had his sweetheart. Eisenhower had his girlfriend in England. And Clinton got caught.
Were you acquainted with President Clinton?
I beg your pardon?
Were you acquainted with President Clinton?
Yes, I knew Bill Clinton. Yes. I knew Carter. Carter, I can tell you, relate a nice story to you. And Carter, in Washington one day, being friendly with Maury Povich, I don't know if you know who he is, but Maury, for a while, was the top gun in Washington, D.C. from television before he moved to New York. And he came to my office and he said, "Norm, I have a gentleman with me that